All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to the first ever collaborative event with electronic arts in the Seattle Seahawks. My name is Nasa Chobe. I'm the executive producer for the Seahawks Radio Network, and I'll be your host for today's virtual conversation on careers for Black History Month. On behalf of the electronic arts in the Seattle Seahawks, we want to say thank you to all the students and teachers from Renton, Washington participating in today's event. Electronic Arts is the proud sponsor of the Play to Learn STEM Career Readiness course, and the Seattle Seahawks sponsor the 306 African American History course. We're really excited to have a chance to bring these two talented groups together and discuss the importance of diversity and representation in careers. And let me tell you something, representation absolutely matters. Students, make sure you guys please submit your questions to the panelists by clicking the Q&A button near the bottom of your screen. Include your name, the school you attend, as well as your questions. And please don't be shy. They're going to be answered in the order they're submitted. We have a really talented group of people. So let's get going. Let's introduce our talented panel. Students, let's give a nice virtual clap for Mr. Anthony D. White, game designer for EA. Nice. We got Terrence West, cinematic producer for EA. We got Midori Hobbs, community engagement coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. And last, we got Ed Goings, the senior vice president of general counsel and government affairs for the Seahawks. So guys, thank you for taking time for coming out for today's chat. Before we kind of get into our discussion, what's one thing you're hoping the students kind of take away from this whole conversation? Midori, why don't we start with you?
I hope I can impart some wisdom, maybe just a quick blurb or something I've said that hopefully can inspire, or that you want to go and research or learn more about. If you just take away one nugget of something I've said, I hope that it's helpful.
All right, Ed?
Yeah, thanks, NASA. I want the students to take away that it's important to be constantly on a quest of self-improvement, that you should be constantly trying to improve yourself. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I'm gonna tell you right now, that's what I want you to think about is how are you improving yourself today?
All right, Terrence?
For me, on my end, no dream is too big, right? Like if you can dream it, then you can achieve it. And all it takes is you taking the right steps to get there.
All right, and Anthony?
Yeah, and I want to echo the sentiments of all the previous panelists that, no matter what your goals are in life, no matter what you aspire to be, hopefully that, you will take away from this event today that, there are people like yourself that are in various roles throughout the STEM sports industries, and that you could be in one of these spots and roles one day yourself. Just work hard and keep at it, and hope we inspire someone out there today watching.
That's great. So nice, guys. Let's jump right into it. Our first question for our Q&A portion with our panel. Now, from your guys' perspective, you guys are all successful in the industries you guys are in, but what's the value of knowing your history and heritage? How has that impacted your career path in getting to this point? So Midori, why don't we start with you again?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really important not only to know your history and your African-American history, but also your family history, to creating that sense of connection, your greater emotional and social well-being, and developing your sense of identity and personality. And it can provide almost like be a guidepost of where your ancestry and history has been, where they are, and where you can go. So just having that connection to your ancestors, your family, your history really can help drive where you're going to go in the future.
All right, Ed, you can jump in.
Sure, yeah. So, I'll hit on a similar theme as Midori. I think that knowing your family history, knowing where you fit into American history, knowing what sort of impact you can have on your future generations, people who today you're not thinking about your kids or grandkids, but believe me, it's going to go by fast. And you need to really understand that you can make a difference. You can actually be the change that for your kids and for your grandkids. And so I think knowing that you're part of a lineage, knowing that you're not just here, you happen to get here through work and sweat and tears and prayers and just a lot of people before you to have this opportunity, don't waste it. Know that you can now take it to another level. So knowing your history, knowing your heritage, knowing the cultural richness of your heritage, I think is important to propel you forward.
That's great stuff, Ed. Terrence?
For me, it powers our voice, right? When we're creating content, we want to make sure that we have a seat at the table that's authentic and speaking for us, where we don't have other individuals creating, stereotypical views of how they view us and how they see us. And it also helps us have the courage to face the systems that have been preventing us from moving forward with diversity and inclusion. So understanding that we're standing on their shoulders is very important for me.
Okay. Anthony?
Yeah, I want to echo all those sentiments, especially for me personally, being from the South and, talking to, relatives and people in my family who grew up during the civil rights era. It was very important to me to understand what they went through and, the sacrifices they made that afforded me the opportunities to be able to take advantage of the various, things that were there for me to help me achieve my goals of where I am today. So that's one thing that I really would like to stress, that, you know your history, you know where you're trying to achieve, where you're going for. You want to create a lasting legacy for those who are going to follow you. I'm in this particular role. All of my nieces and nephews and, younger relatives, they look up to what I do here. A cousin of mine who's the first Black superintendent of Allentown, Pennsylvania school district, same thing. We often talk to one another about, making a lasting legacy to those who are going to follow us. They can look at us and see those are family members who are achieving greatness.
That's really good stuff, guys. And I kind of echo quickly. My family's from Uganda, so I'm the first person born in my family born here. So kind of knowing where I'm from and the heritage and the history and what my parents had to go through to get me here, to set me up for the opportunities that I have today that they didn't necessarily have. And I can keep spinning that forward for when I have kids that they have it better than I did. So I think that's really important. So that's good stuff, guys. We'll keep rolling right along into question number 2. So like I mentioned earlier, you guys are incredibly successful. But how'd you get on your path that led you to this point in your career? I'm sure not all of us when we were 7 years old thought this is what we were going to do for a living, but how'd you get on this path and what led you to this point? Midori, you want to start us off?
I always answer that question with, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I just have a passion. So when you find your passion versus, for me, my passion versus an exact job or job title, that has led to me to where I am today. So I've always wanted to support and help others, and that's manifested itself in different ways. I worked for the US military as a civilian for many years prior to coming on with the Seahawks. And I think that that's just kind of an area or niche market that not a lot of people know about. So there's opportunity to live and work overseas. The African diaspora is vast and wide. So I was in Japan, the Marshall Islands, doing support work for our military and our local communities in Japan and the Marshall Islands. Really built an affinity for working with local cultures and local folks. So when I came on with the Seahawks, it seemed like a very natural fit to be working in the community engagement department, because I'm supporting and uplifting and amplifying our communities here in the Seattle and greater Seattle area.
That's awesome, Midori. Ed, how did you get to being the SVP of General Counsel and Government Affairs at the Seahawks, and maybe explain a little bit what entails in that job?
Yeah, no, I will. So you guys heard my title, but so at the bottom, I'm a lawyer. So I'm a lawyer, and I'm trained as a lawyer, and I do a lot of legal issues, looking at legal issues, contracts, and what have you for the Seahawks. The government affairs part deals a lot with government leaders with regards to public policy, COVID responses, and things like that. But so I'm a lawyer, and I think the reason I became a lawyer is, like Anthony, I grew up in the South. I grew up in a small town in the South, in Arkansas, in fact. My grandparents and my parents both went to segregated schools by law, that, Black kids go here, white kids go here. So my mom was the first generation that experienced in her senior year integration. I came along at a time where there was the forced integration, forced busing, all those kinds of things. I went to integrated schools throughout. However, all the vestiges and the hangovers from segregation were still present in my school system throughout, from elementary all the way up to high school. Since a lot of the folks here are in high school, I believe, right? At least enough of them are. Our prom, my high school prom, had a black court, meaning a black king and queen and black, the full court, and they had a white king and queen in a full court. I played football, and we'd run out of the stadium or of the locker room to the king and queen. On each side was the black court and the white court. And that was my high school. And I, at the time, didn't think anything of it because it was just the way it was. And nobody said anything about it. It wasn't even a discussion. The only reason why it became a discussion is because at some point, the law said that that wasn't, that's not right. That the law says that we have integration. The law says that you can't segregate people. The Brown versus Board of Education, 1954. I came along in late 80s, 1980 something. So we're 30 years after Brown v. Board of Education, and we still have de facto segregation. And that carried throughout the city, not just at the high school, but businesses, neighborhoods, services. Everything was provided in a very racialized way. And typically the Black race was getting the least of it. And so that really had an impact on me because it said to me that unless the laws are enforced, things don't change. Many times society isn't ready for the legal change, but the legal change will force society to come on board. And there's some instances where it goes the other way around, where society is ahead of the law. But too often I saw with the Brown v. Board of Education, with the Civil Rights Act, that the laws were saying you need to change as a society. So for me, law was that savior, that the law could change attitudes. And so that's what led me into law. I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. I wanted to actually make the world better. I love sports. So I ended up segueing into sports, but a thread that you'll see in my legal career is always going to be about equity and about making sure that the voices that aren't heard so often get heard.
Thanks, Ed. That's really powerful. I mean, it's crazy to think about that. Obviously, I went to school out here and I did not grow up with segregation. It's unbelievable that was a norm to you. And I think it's inspiring that's why you're doing stuff and changing laws, and that's how things get done and representation matters. So thanks, Ed. Terrence, how'd you get in cinematic producer for EA? That's huge. How'd you get started down that road?
Yeah, I mean, I had to follow Ed on that one, right? But I always knew that I wanted to be a producer. I watched Jurassic Park, and just being growing up in Miami, in a low income like neighborhood, seeing some dinosaurs on the screen and a whole new world that was vastly different than what I had to face outside was like amazing to me, right? And at the end, you see Steven Spielberg name on everything. Executive producer, writer, line producer. And I remember telling my dad, I want to be like that. If he can make that happen, I want to do that. And my dad looked at me and said, good luck. That was into that story. But I never stopped, right? Like I never stopped. I always wanted to do it. And then life kind of happens to find a way to put you there. I had hopes of playing for the University of Miami. I tore like my ACL the day that I was supposed to meet one of the coaches, and the theater teacher felt so bad for me and that she set me on a stage because she didn't want me to just get lost to the streets. She set me on a stage, and then after that, I felt more in love with production and found out that it's aligning to that original goal to be a producer. And then when I came up to Orlando, EA Sports is here in Orlando, and I got an opportunity to, I just wanted to be in. And so I went around from being a QA tester to going up to being a designer on one side, to being a producer, to back around, because I wanted to know everything about the business. And that just led me to getting into the role of being like a cinematic producer. So now I get to be in charge of a lot of the story narratives that we place within our games.
Oh, that's awesome, Terrence. Congrats, man. That's huge, man. Going over a kid from Miami to where you're at now is great. Just a reminder, students, to submit your questions to the panelists with the Q&A button on the bottom of the screen. Include your name, your school you attend, along with your questions, and don't be shy because we got an abundance of knowledge from everyone on our panel today. And Anthony, game designer for EA, so we'll let you on that path.
Yeah, and basically how I got started in this whole path, if you will, I've always had an interest in games growing up, in technology and those types of things. And what really inspired me was one of my high school teachers. Now, I graduated high school in 1991. I may be dating myself here, but back in those days, it's not like now. You have your cell phones, social media, various apps, and everyone has a computer. But back in those days, I thought it was amazing. Like my sophomore year of high school, that hey, there's this new device called a computer. And that, one of my teachers, she was actually showing me, hey, well, if you can have the computer do different things by giving it instructions, and it actually does what you're actually asking it to do. So that sort of sparked my interest in like programming and things of that nature. Now, what eventually I wound up going to the military, United States Air Force. I started out as security police. As a matter of fact, my first duty assignment was up there in the Pacific Northwest in Fairchild Air Force Base over in Spokane, Washington. And I would actually go over to Tacoma. So I'm very familiar with the Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue area. And it was one of those days that I was security guy, go into the office. It snow outside, and it snows a lot on the other side of the state. They're sitting there, they're working on the computer. Again, this is like 1993 now. They're working on their computers. I'm looking at them like, okay, I don't know what it is that you guys do, but I want to do that. So they actually talked to me about, what they were doing, which is computer networking. This was sort of the early ages of the internet. And, so that got me interested in that particular career path. So I cross-trained over into computer management and networking. And then from there, I started to get back into that love of, programming and IT. Well, I always had an interest in video gaming, and how I actually got to EA Sports. This was also at the early dawn of blogging. Okay, so I actually, as a hobby, had a blog that was devoted to video games. So through that means, that attracted the attention of Electronic Arts. And then our corporate headquarters are based down in San Francisco. So long story short, they started flying what they would call, what today as influencers. They started bringing us out to their corporate headquarters. We'd give them feedback on the game. We would sort of get assignments, working for easports.com on various little programs and things of that nature. And then, of course, that eventually got the attention of the guys here in Orlando, where we're based. I work alongside with Terrence, by the way. He does an excellent job, I should add. One thing led to another, and they could see that I was passionate about the games. I had a vision for what I wanted the games to go, features, how our fans could engage the game, but also too, more importantly, how we can grow our game, how we can reach wider audiences. So being able to impress upon, the management at that time, that these were things that, were very interesting to me, and that I could actually help achieve those types of, results. They offered a position, and I've steadily started out as a assistant producer, assistant designer. Now that I'm over an entire gameplay feature area, where I pretty much all of the game's AI in terms of defensive logic, working with animators, coming up and directing motion capture shoots. All of those things sort of led me that early interaction in that classroom, kind of like what you guys are doing today, led me down to this path. So that's pretty much how I got to EA. But yeah, it's been a long winding road, but it's been a path that I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. And does anyone know, so you're an OG influencer? You have that on your resume?
Well, you know what? I do talk to some of the, because like it's kind of funny now because we work with a lot of the quote unquote big time YouTubers, and I'm sure probably a lot of our class students in the classes, they are probably familiar with some of these people, and not just with the EA Sports games, but all kinds of video games. So we actually bring those people to our studio and we talk to those people, and it is kind of funny to hear them say, "Wow." You were like, quote unquote, one of the first ones, but you didn't have a title for it because back then it was just doing something cool, and there you go. But yeah, that's it was fun.
Oh, that's really dope. We'll keep it moving. So you guys all got here through hard work and passion and just not taking no for an answer, but I'm sure there was some help along the way, right? So like, who are the mentors and heroes, and what kind of life lessons did you learn from them in order to get where you guys are today? Midori, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, I gotta say the parents. I'm really fortunate. I had parents that were just very supportive and really allowed my brother and I to really just go for it and give us those opportunities and to try different things when we were growing up. And I know that not everyone is afforded that, so I'm very grateful for that. But more so from a professional standpoint, both my parents worked. They were teachers, teacher administrators, and did quite a bit in the teaching field. And I just saw their work ethic. I saw how hard they worked. I saw how late they were in their classrooms. I saw how passionate they were with their students, who now, decades later, I have their former students reaching out to me, finding me on Facebook saying, "Hey, are you so-and-so's daughter? I had her in like 6th grade." And I'm like, oh my gosh. So the power and influence they had on youth was absolutely incredible. Seeing my mother complete her doctorate at 65, shortly before she was going to retire. And she's like, I would just want to do it. And I'm like, all right, you got that, lady, because I don't, I got my bachelor's and I'm good. But so I just see that how much they strived, how hard they worked, and how much integrity they had in their work. I mirrored that, and I mirror that in my work today. Additionally, I had a really great mentor when I was overseas, a woman of a vice president that I reported to at the time, who really was able to school me up on some of the things that are in between the lines, or some of the soft skills that are needed to start really building that repertoire as you start to grow in your professional career. So she was really great, and we continue to do check-ins, which is really helpful for me because you always need a team around you. That's a person, your family, your friends, colleagues that can really uplift you, support you, and your journey, whether it's professional or personal.
That's great, Midori. And Midori is one of the hardest working people we have at the Seahawks, and her passion comes through. So your parents obviously did a great job. Ed, mentors growing up, especially you had a lot of people I'm assuming you looked up to going into your field. What kind of got you?
No, yes. Sorry, didn't mean to step over you there. So unlike Midori, I didn't have parents to sort of model myself. My parents were really young. Parents had me when they were 15 and 16. So I kind of grew up with them. And my grandfather was the person in the house that I really looked up to. And just like with Midori, he was just a hard worker. Like, he worked so hard to make sure that he took care of his family and make sure that, people were fed and had a roof over their heads. He worked so hard that he worked for 35 years and only had one vacation day. And he would say the reason why he doesn't take vacations because they pay you if you don't take your vacation. That's like extra money. I was like, but not really, because you're working. But it's not, you're actually working for that. But so literally he took one day off just to go to my mother's birth. That was the only reason he ever left work. And so watching him get up every day, and he drove like a truck for like 500 something miles every night. So just watching him every day get up, go to work, just every day, just go to work, pounding wood all the time. Never thought about himself at all, always talking about the family and taking care of the family. That was my motivation internally, that if I ever get upset about how much work I'm doing, I always think about my granddad and go, never compared the work that he did. So that was my at home motivation. I think mentally, I would always think about people like MLK and Thurgood Marshall, just people that I looked up to and said, those are people I want to one day be like. So I think my inspiration came outside the home when it came to actually professional, but just hard work was my granddad.
That's great. No, it definitely shows with the work you've been doing. Terrence, What role models do you have growing up?
Like Ed is the same, so it wasn't that, it was more like my parents didn't know, right? Like they didn't have like the answers like for me on how to get me from point A to point B. So what I learned like really early, growing up down in Miami, is you have to hustle for every single thing. There's not going to be a handout for you, but it's all about like who you know in a network, right? Like go outside of your 5 friends and continue to strengthen yourself, because there's plenty of people out there in the world that's ready to open a door for you. They just don't know you yet, right? So I took that like mentality and also applied to always be learning, right? So I never know enough. I always feel like, I'm at the bottom. It doesn't matter what my title is or whatever, I'm at the bottom. So I always want to continue to work and push ahead with that. But I reach out to individuals that's not even in my industry. I did a coaching class this week with individuals that work for Lego, or reaching out to people that work for Pixar, or people that work for Disney, to find out their processes of what they do to make great art. And I think the passion of filmmaking and cinematography really like drives that aspect of it, and you can always learn something else, and it's not even like an ages thing, right? You don't have to go. It's a lot of great young talent out there, and it's a lot of great talent that has a lot of experience, and you just want to like soak it all up. So like really just loving your craft and being passionate about that is the bigger point for me.
That's a lot of good stuff, guys. Take notes, man. You are never too old to learn. You never have it always figured out. It doesn't matter how successful you are. Case in point by everyone on this panel, that you always keep learning. So I appreciate that, Terrence. What about you, Anthony?
Yeah, my biggest influences and mentors, obviously starting out with my parents. Fortunate enough to come from a home where I had both parents who were actively involved and engaged with our, growth and well-being, both mentally, spiritually, but also too socially. And then, of course, helping us stay on track from an educational standpoint. So that was one of the big things that I really appreciated about, looking at, a lot of people in my family, especially my dad. And then, even though, my dad and my mom, they worked long hours to help provide us what we needed, I still was able to get a lot of great sound advice and, guidance from them. And then also two other members of my family, I have an aunt, she owns her own law firm, another aunt who's a doctor. I have an uncle who works for the IRS. So, those are the types of people that I really sort of developed and sort of, got that desire to want to achieve from an educational standpoint, because I saw firsthand, if I worked hard enough and I applied myself, I could achieve to be, something like them one day. In terms professionally, one of my biggest mentors is the former head coach at Howard University. His name is Steve Wilson. As a matter of fact, he's in the Black College Football Hall of Fame. So part of my job is sort of establishing and working relationships with a lot of, NFL coaches and college coaches and things of that nature. But I met him about maybe 12 years ago, around the time I first started. And, obviously it started out just talking football and, how we could help build the game, but also too, learning from his experiences and, being able to sort of guide me through the business world in terms of how to, approach certain circumstances that may come up professionally. But also too, just being someone who's you're able to talk to, because obviously, he's a coach, he has players who are currently coaches in the NFL right now. Obviously he's retired. And then of course he's giving them advice. So, and all the hundreds and hundreds of players that he's coached. So that's someone I like to joke around with him, I've been promoted like 4 times since I've known you. So it's one of those things that you talk to people, you find people like that you can really lean on. Obviously, like I said, my parents will always be there, but there's someone professionally that sort of help me, guide me, in certain circumstances, give me advice, and he helped me, pretty much progress in my career.
That's great, guys. We're going to kind of shift gears into the student questions, but I just want to thank the panel for some really good nuggets and knowledge. I hope you guys really soak that up like a sponge, because it's some great stuff, and to find a way to be successful in what you want to do. So we're going to go. I'm going to start with the first question from Baker. What are some things that a middle school student can do right now to set them up for a career that you all have now? So why don't we, Midori, you want to start there?
Sure. To that question, I would just say, just start doing your research and start looking into not only just what's the face value, like, sure, there's a Seahawks, but what does that entail? What builds out the Seahawks? What kind of roles are there? What kind of jobs are there? So if you look, for example, on our website, you see the Russell Wilsons, and you see all the fun stuff, but then you see the breakdown of the organization, and you see what kind of roles there are, and you see what kind of opportunities there are. So really start doing some digging to see, okay, if that person is, for example, NASA, an executive producer, interesting. And what does that take? How do I get to those steps? And kind of working backwards from there is something I may advise, is if I want to be X, or if I want to be working for X organization, how do I get to that level and work backwards? What do I have to start working on now? Is it taking extra courses? Is it doing some, University YouTube? There's some great free materials out there to get you jump started. If you want to start networking and reaching out to folks, I'm not sure, I know LinkedIn is more for adult professionals, but just start researching and seeing who's out there. You may be able to shadow somebody, maybe get a part-time job somewhere. We have a street team with the Seahawks where we hire part-time staff to support us. So while you might not be able to make that jump right away, like you're not going to be a lawyer tomorrow, but you can start those building blocks to get you there to those steps.
I think that's really good advice, because we have the power of the internet at our fingertips, and you can learn so much there, just right there for the taking. So even if you're in middle school, you can start now. So that's great advice, Midori. Ed?
Yeah, I almost could just say what Midori said, because it literally is that. It's like visualizing yourself in that role, and then and then work yourself back. I would say there's an old book that was a bestseller. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's about habit. It's really, and there's like a 10, there's 11, there's a bunch of books now about it, but it's really about how do you develop good habits? How do you develop good habits? So I'll say it one more time. How do you develop good habits? It's about learning yourself. So I'll stick it in and then the question and answer thing, but you guys should read that book if there's not other books out there like it. But read any book that tells you about how do you go about developing good habits, because it's all about self-improvement. And then you could take that and apply it toward any job. But the idea is develop yourself, invest in yourself.
That's great. Terrence, I know a lot of friends I had were super into gaming and super into the EA sports side of things, especially when I was in middle school, playing NBA Live, EA, 2K, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But how, from your perspective, since where you're at now, how can a middle school kid get on your path?
The biggest thing is most of them already are, right? You're creating your own content on TikTok. You're creating your own content on Twitch. You're playing the games and you're showing your passion for it. Where I will say the thing is invest in your business and yourself, right? So not only putting out the content, but figure out these services that you put your content on is how are they getting paid? Not only how do I get the followers, but what can I do to increase, my followers? Because like Anthony said earlier, we pay attention, and we notice, and we give out special invitation to those like individuals so they can come give us feedback early. And that type of hand-to-hand and peer-to-peer relationship as it becomes is another great way that opens the door for you. We've hired on multiple people within our company that was just passionate about playing the games, but don't do it for free, right? If you love it, don't do it for free. So take the time, work on your craft, and just continue to make content. Keep driving it. Don't drop a video on Monday and be consistent at being inconsistent, right? So put yourself on a nice schedule and continue to build on your projects.
That's great. Anthony, you want to jump in?
Sure, yeah. And I want to sort of piggyback off what Ed was saying. Having a military background, being disciplined, And don't mistake discipline with punishment. I don't. Discipline is basically knowing what you have to do and making sure that you are focused on doing those things to help you achieve the goals and the results that you're looking for. One of the things that I like to talk to, groups like this and tell them about is, when you're in class and you're in that math class or you're in that science class, whatever, really focus on, trying to take it all in, because those are the types of skill sets that, when you do look to, like Terrence said, we do bring a lot of people in. People get to EA a lot of different ways. You got the academia route. We have grad programs now that people can go that route, but we also too hire based on subject matter, content and expertise. But also too, once you get here though, it's not just about getting here, but it's also staying here, maintaining here, and being able to impress upon people that what you're doing, what you're talking about, because you talk to a lot of different people in a lot of different disciplines on a daily basis. People like myself and Terrence, we have to be able to articulate ideas to software engineers, artists, animators, motion capture actors, business people who need to, because they're the ones who ultimately going to have to sign off on these decisions. So you want to be well-rounded, in all of your coursework. Make sure that you're setting goals. You're focused on maintaining maintaining a path, if you will, that you will be able to successfully achieve whatever it is that you want to do, especially from the academic side of things. Because again, if I could go back years, I would pay a lot more attention in geometry and trigonometry, because those are things I use every day on my job. It is like second nature. So those are the types of things that I would really impress upon the students watching this, is to be goal oriented, be disciplined, and really, you'll be able to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve.
My wife's a math teacher, so she would love that you just said that. Pay attention, school kids. It's gonna do good work for you.
Oh yeah, you knew how much I dealt with formulas and angles and X, Y. Oh yeah, all of that good stuff.
All right, question number 2 from Isabel Navarro Cornell from Bethel High School. What were some challenges to get you to where you are now, and how did you overcome those challenges? Dory?
Yeah, thanks for that question. You hear a lot of no's along the way, and you have to learn how to work with those no's that you hear. And sometimes it's like that door closes. Okay, does another door open right away? Not always, but how can I pivot? How can I just like build that bridge? How can I build a ladder? How can I get over the wall? How can I levitate, make it over to the other side? And I just keep pushing through. There's really no one right way to do something, especially when you're on your own personal journey. It is really just dependent on you. I've heard a lot of no's. Before I got on with the Seahawks, I applied to over 100 jobs, y'all, and heard no's. And it was for a reason, because now I'm here with the Seahawks. And through that process, I was able to hone my resume. I was able to hone in on my interviewing skills. I was able to just look introspectively and be like, what is it that I really want? Why am I applying for this job? Do I really want this job? Or do I want to be more intentional with my search? So a lot of those no's, I'm just like, that's cool. I'm gonna just keep it pushing. I've learned from it. How can I keep moving forward and reach whatever goal I have in front of me?
I love that attitude. I'll second that. Before I got this job, I can't tell you how many times no was just, I heard that hundreds of times, hundreds and hundreds, but you got to keep chopping wood, because it just takes one yes. It takes one yes, and who knows where you're going to end up going on from there. So Ed, you want to talk about some challenges? We know you got tons of them that you've overcome.
Yeah, no, I'll just mention one, which I think a lot of people suffer from, but don't talk about. It's self-doubt. It's the belief, it's this belief, this voice in your head that says, oh, maybe I'm not the right person, or maybe I can't do it, or maybe, this isn't meant for me. I think self-doubt can hold you back. Self-doubt can prevent you from even having a chance to take that challenge on. And so the one thing I would say is that someone told me a long time ago, show up. Like, show up. Literally, if there's an interview and you think you may not do well in it, show up anyway. Or you didn't, you don't want to go to this event or something, show up, because showing up is like 90% of the erasure of self-doubt. Because once you show up, your competitive juices get into it, and then you start to do it. But if you don't give yourself a chance, you won't have a chance. So I'd say what helped me through that was I he wasn't a mentor, it was just my boss in my first year as a lawyer at the law firm, who for some reason, no reason, I don't remember, because I didn't know him that well, said, I trust you. Literally would give me, this happens to no first year lawyer ever, would say, we need this document filed, or we need this issued, argued. We want you to argue it, file it, and then go to court and argue it. Literally in front of a judge as a first year associate, which all my other first year associates at other firms were all just, at my knee going, wow, and then what did the judge say? Because you never get a chance to actually talk to a judge. So my first year, I got that chance, and it just did like, a 180 in my head about what I can and can't do. And so I think having someone trust you, give you an opportunity, and you get through it with flying colors, it just gives you this sense of invincibility. So definitely having a champion helps, but try to get through it yourself initially. Get rid of the self-doubt.
That's good stuff. Terrence?
The biggest thing is back to the nose. Your initial idea, you think it's the best idea ever. And there's people sitting in a room who don't play the games. They're from the business side. They're looking at analytics and they're going to tell you no, right? You spend a lot of time on it. So like, how do you handle that mentally? I had to go into myself and realize it was based off of my own personal expectation. Like I went in there with a higher expectation. So I had to reset myself and not look at it as a teachable moment for me. So now when I go in with like multiple solutions, with the understanding it's not just about one feature, it's about the bigger picture. How is this going to impact our brand and our brand partners over the next 5 to 10 years? So the next time I go into a meeting, it's a 5-year plan on what we're going to deliver, not just this one small feature. Here's a 5-year plan. This is how we're going to get here. And this is everything that we need for it. So they have enough information to make the decision. Because like I said previously, I thought you just sat in the room and like, yo, I'm smart. You like me, so you're going to say yes. And it's not. It's a lot of steps along the way in that process. So I started to find ways to have fun within that process. And now it's exciting to be in those rooms.
Nice. That's dope. Anthony?
Yeah, and I agree 1000% with Terrence. He's been in those rooms and he's brought ideas to me. I don't know about that one, but still, it's an opportunity for, to refine and reflect and, take feedback so that when you come back the next time around, oh, T West, done. Let's roll with it. So that's and that goes with, with Dory and what Ed was saying as well. You take that, don't just take the no and those obstacles and, sulk and, go put your head between your toes and, walk off. No, use that as an opportunity to get feedback on how I can improve, how I can get better. So the next time around, I'm more prepared. I know what to expect. And then, you can sort of, it'll help you sort of move forward with that. I've also had those, because obviously at a place like EA, we get a lot of ideas and, a lot of us, we're bringing those ideas, but, you have to understand, how does this impact the business? The students who are watching today, are you guys actually going to engage with that content? Is it fun? People like us, we have to look out, how much work is this going to be to actually pull this off? Are we going to have people working overtime? So there's all these types of things you have to, that I'm like Terrence, I didn't understand when I first got hired at EA. So it was like, no. But when you get that feedback and you learn those processes, you grow from it. Now, when you go in and you put those things together, you have a full understanding of how it's going to work. So you have a better chance of achieving, the results you want. Now, it doesn't always guarantee that you will get that yes, but at least, you have a better understanding knowing that you are prepared and, you are able to, come in with, all the cards in the deck, if you will, because you know that you had those past experiences where you've gotten that feedback from previous no's and it's helped you get that yes that you're eventually going to, you're striving for.
That's great. So question number 4 from Christina Flood from Kent Meridian High School. Did you find it easier or harder? Oh, excuse me. Sorry, one second. My Chat got refreshed. Okay, so from Christina Flood from Kent Meridian, do you find it easier or harder growing up knowing where your family is from and knowing your ancestry? Dory?
What was that last part, NASA? Is it easier or harder knowing where you're from, your ancestry?
Did you find it easier or harder growing up knowing where your family is from and knowing your ancestry?
I think it was really important to know like where my family, both sides of my family came from. You know, my mom's side of the family, we can trace back to, you know, being our ancestors being slaves in the Carolinas, and then making their way up to New England, and some really interesting stories that have been passed down by word of mouth. And then on my father's side, you know, immigrants from Slovakia, and my lineage to a small town in Slovakia, and knowing kind of some of the isms and things that are innate to my family and who I am today come from those lineages, and are really, really important. And it's really just important for me to be able to just continue that lineage and that heritage, and make my ancestors and my family proud.
Thanks, Midori. Ed?
Yeah, I think for me, it was looking at what people were saying, especially in the South, about my people and where I'm from, and then combining that with what I see at my own house. You know, I see people who work hard. I see people who care about each other. I see people who take care of each other. I see the strength and the resilience. But then reading and listening to people who are outside the house, particularly in the South, talking down about my people, it didn't mesh up. So knowing what I knew and seeing what I saw in my house and the strength I saw, it was important. It helped. It didn't hurt.
Terrence?
I love my culture, 100%, 100%. I love it. I mean, everything that they went through so we can be here today to have this conversation, is amazing to me. What they had to endure for like so many years. It's just, it gives me strength in the moments where I feel like I'm weak, right? Like when I feel like I'm having a bad day, when I'm feeling like I want to like quit, I can always like reflect on that, whether or not it's my grandparents or further back, or even looking at my daughters, right? And making sure that they have a better upbringing than what I have. So it brings me like great joy to be a part of the culture. And I take that with me within the meetings. So like I ensure that we getting 100% of everything. I'm not taking no discounts. I'm not, because that's important for us to make sure that they're not just taking from the culture, but they're giving back in so many ways, because we need that, right? And we earned that. So it's very important for me to make sure that I'm carrying them with me when I walk in the rooms.
Thanks. Anthony?
Yeah, I want to echo the sentiments of everyone. It's very important for myself as well, being from the South, and, hearing those stories about, what, people before me went through, and things of that nature. So I am very cognizant of, the culture, and very proud of, my background and my heritage. And, sometimes I do sort of internalize and wonder, it would be cool if, some of those people could see where we are today. Obviously we have a long way to go with a lot of issues still out there, but at the bare minimum, I think they would get some satisfaction knowing if they could see some of the things and the achievements that me and some of my generation have been able to partake on.
Thanks. That's awesome, guys. We got time for one more question. This is from Khalid Muhammad. What advice would you give your high school self? Oh, this is a good one. Dory?
First and foremost, put the tweezers down, stop over plucking your eyebrows. That was number one, because my senior photos, oof, those were rough. But really, I wish I had just tried more. I really wish I had just branched out and I really wish I had tried out for like the golf team or soccer, or just done some other things within my school, some of the clubs. I was really focused on a few things, but when you're that young and have those opportunities available to you, whether it's sports, a club, an activity, just try it. If you don't like it, probably isn't going to kill you. So just trying all those things, and you get to find out more about yourself, what you like, what you don't like, a skill you may not realize that you could potentially develop. So I would just say try and do as much as you can while you have the time, because when you get older, somehow the clock speeds up for some reason. So that's my advice.
Thanks, Midori. Ed?
Yeah, I think I would just tell myself that it's okay you didn't make the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's okay to, it's okay that you didn't actually, break all of O.J. Simpson's records. No, but I just felt like, I would tell myself definitely that life has so much more to offer than what you think you're going to do from high school. You got so many more options and so much more of the world to explore and to grow and to be the man or woman you're supposed to be, not just what you think you're going to be in high school. So allow yourself that chance, like Midori said, to explore, to be something greater than you even think you could be today. That's what I would say.
Thanks, Ed. What would you tell young Terrence?
Invest, right? Like invest. I think coming up, it was really, I cared more about how I appeared to like so many individuals because I was trying to be a part of a particular industry and thought that was the way, when I probably could have invested that time into learning more about the business. I can invest that time learning more about publishing. I could have invested that time into doing something else, like, and not being focused on what I thought the result would be. It's easy for us to think about Beyonce, her car, and her bank account, and not think about all of the time that she puts into the choreography, the times that she hurt and she still got to get up, she still got to perform, or the times when she was this young girl in the mall singing her heart out and only 20 people like walking by, right? But those are all of the things that make the journey matter. So appreciating that and investing in that more is probably what I'll tell myself.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, Terrence. And Anthony, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, most definitely. I definitely would have tried to tell myself as at a younger age to, try to learn about the cultures and, the backgrounds of other people, sort of expand. Where I grew up, it was basically black, white, that was it. And then, it was one of those deals where when I got to the military, being able to sort of experience new things, experience new people, experience different cultures and backgrounds, because it also helped me appreciate them, and it helped me appreciate the differences and have a lot more tolerance and things of those nature. And also too, it goes back to what some of the, I believe Midori mentioned earlier about networking. When you build that network, you have comfort with when you being able to go outside of your normal comfort levels, if you will, to talk to someone, engage with someone, being able to learn about their experiences. And then, when it's time for you to start making those connections, you never know what door by you networking with someone might open for you. So those would be one of the biggest things that I would definitely go back and tell my younger self, is to sort of expand, my knowledge base, if you will, about other races, cultures, backgrounds, ethnicities, genders, whatever the case may be. Because I think that will help me be a better person in the long run, and I'll benefit from that.
Well, thanks, guys. Honestly, there was so much good information shared today, and I hope everyone that's listening today took a lot from it. I know I did personally. So before we wrap, I just want to give a nice virtual clap to all of our special guests who took the time to speak with everyone today. Honestly, thank you so much, guys. Before we go, I just want to get a quick little screenshot of all the panel together. So I'm going to count you down. They're going to take a quick screenshot. So in 3, 2, 1. All right, guys. On behalf of the Electronic Arts and the Seattle Seahawks, thank you so much for taking your time to listen to us, hear our panel. We appreciate you guys, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.